Hello everyone, welcome to my class. My name is Dr. Kevin Omonali and I'm going to be your instructor in Philosophy 1301, Introduction to Philosophy. The question has always been, what is philosophy? And how did philosophy begin? And this has been a great debate over time, over different philosophic periods, as to find out what philosophy is and how philosophy began within the ages. So philosophy, as a matter of fact, began with human wonder, in which human beings were concerned about the you stuff, the main thing for which every other thing is made. People were concerned about uh, why is there light and darkness? Why is there life and death? Why is there cause and effect? Why would there be day and night? And the experiences that humans experience. People were finding questions to that and wondering why there is water, why there is seasons in the year, why the birds fly, you know, wonder, as a matter of fact, is really responsible for the beginning of philosophy. So humans began to wonder about their problems, about their situations, and philosophy was born. So systematic Western philosophy began from Asia Minor in Miletus. It was in Miletus when it began, and it actually began with two Greek poets, Homer and Hesiod. The experiences of life way made these two great friends of ours, Homer and Hesiod, postulate that what happens to humans are masterminded by the gods. So the activities of humans are interfered and interrupted by the gods. Hesiod wrote two poems, one he called the Iliad and the Odyssey. And in those poems, Hesiod explained that the activities of humans are being interfered by these gods. And then these gods would always give humans punishment when they disobey, when they show any pride in obeying the commands, and of course when they go against the nature. Hesiod presented a picture of a punishing God, of a God who interferes in the activities of humans and who wastes no time giving punishment, of course, when it is necessary. Homer gave a picture of a punishing God who would always interfere in the activities of humans. And give punishment when necessary. Hesiod, on the other hand, also looked at the experiences of humans. He also related it with the activities of gods, with the interferences of gods. But in Hesiod's way, Hesiod didn't view it from the perspective of punishment, giving punishment to humans by gods. No, Hesiod saw it like it's more of a moral guidance, a moral order, that the moral order in the universe, in the life of people, are being governed by the command of Zeus. Zeus, as a matter of fact, is the chief God. Let's put it that way. The chief God of the gods. So like he is the highest of the gods in the hierarchy of the gods. So Hesiod says moral order in the universe is being controlled and managed by the command and authority of Zeus, who happens to be the chief god. So he identifies the presence of gods in the activities of humans with moral order in the universe. Unlike Homer, who identified the presence of God in the activities of humans with more of policing, more of making sure that punishment is given to humans when they show pride and when they don't play by his rules. Hesiod wrote his poem, and his poem is, he called the poem of Hesiod is Theogony. 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 That's the poem of Hesiod, Theogony. And that's where he explained all these things. So now, when humans were moving from Athens to Miletus, at the seaport of Miletus, Miletus, as it once was, is a city that was wealthy. It had a lot of things. There was a lot of trade going on in Miletus. So people could come from different places to Miletus to do businesses. People were coming to Miletus to do business. And Miletus is in present-day Turkey. So they were coming there to do businesses. And so when they gathered together, at their leisure, they will begin to speculate on what could be the thing that is behind every other thing. The thoughts and the speculations of these two great poets, Homer and Hesiod, influenced the early Greek philosophers. People like Thales, people like Anaximander, people like Anaximenes, and so many other ancient philosophers. Now, these Greek philosophers began to look into the writings of these poets and begin to think along their line to see the connection between the powerhouse, the epicenter, the substance that is responsible for all things, both in the universe and in human experiences, to find a solution, to find an answer to the possible problems and issues that humans have. Now, but the difference is, when these ancient Greek philosophers began to partake in the philosophic banquet of philosophizing, of trying to find what is responsible for all things in the universe, they didn't go the way the poets went. The poets were relating everything, every experiences and the order in the world to the gods. When these ancient philosophers by themselves began to philosophize, they began to philosophize independently. They began to use human reasoning, rigorous human reasoning, to arrive at what is responsible, the substance upon which every other thing is. The questions of wonder, the answer to the questions of wonder. We are now began to be from human reasoning, which was different from the time of the poets, Homer and Hesiod. The postulations of the ancient philosophers and the postulations of the ancient Greek poets like Homer and Hesiod are described in the field of philosophy as a myth. Now, it is called to be a myth because it is not verifiable. The information they were given are information that we can verify if relating human experiences to God's. How do we know that? Right? And then the ancient philosophers, like Thales, with time we will get into the philosophy of Thales, and then we will see what Thales talks about in his philosophy. And then we can just suppose, we can intertwine to see the connection between what these poets and Thales talks, to merge it if it's possible in real life, if it appeals to common sense. And so because it's not, it couldn't make sense in a way to connect what these poets were saying and what these early Greek philosophers were saying to the reality of the time. They were described as to the reality of human, existence, human existence. Because we couldn't verify it, we described it as myth. M-Y-T-H, a myth. But I must note that in this sense, a myth is different from a fable, and is different from a fairy tale, and is different from a folklore. The pure distinction between the two is that in myths will provide a necessary information that can reasonably equip you, just in case you choose to verify the information. For example, a myth will provide the name of whatever subject that is involved in a story. A myth will provide a time frame of whatever story that happened. A myth provides the space, the place in which it took place. For example, the beginning of philosophy. Homer and Hesiod. Research has it that they existed around 8 BC, 8th century BC. That's when they existed. That's time frame. Name was provided of the gods that could have been interfering in the existence of human beings. Zeus. A place is provided that this is where this thing must have, these ancient early philosophers began philosophizing. People like Thales, people like Anaximenes, Anaximandes and Anaximenes, where they began to philosophize. A place was provided. Miletus. They moved philosophy when the humans was moving from Athens to Miletus. And then in Miletus, in the city town of Miletus, in Asia Minor Miletus, as a matter of fact, philosophy began, speculation began. Humans began to philosophize. So you see, a name is provided, a time is provided, a place is provided in myth. But in fairy tale, it is not always like that. Fairy tale does not provide you with this precise information. It wouldn't provide the name, the time, or the place in fairy tales, fables, or folklores. That's why myth is it's different from fairy tales, folklores, and fables. Philosophy as a discipline is different from philosophy as an aspect of life. Philosophy in its broadest context, philosophy as philosophy can be seen from two distinct perspectives. One is philosophy as a discipline, as a human study, as a field of research and study. One is philosophy as a way of life, human conduct. We are concerned, both of them, both philosophy as a way of life and philosophy as a human study, have connections. They're almost one and the same thing. Now, philosophy as a discipline has four distinct stages of development. So we have the ancient period, which is the first stage of the development of philosophy as a discipline. And in the ancient period, we have ancient philosophers that existed in that period, and we shall break them down as the lecture goes. Then we have the medieval period. In the ancient period, the first stage of philosophy, the ancient period, was a period in which speculation of the reality of life and human experiences was based on myth, on superstitions, on superstition. With a tremendous slowness, with time, as humans began to philosophize independently, applying human reason, it broadens their mindset. And then they moved into another level, another stage of philosophic growth, which is the medieval period. In the medieval period in philosophy, humans begin to apply some level of faith to balance reason, because in the first stage of philosophy, which is the ancient period, it was purely reason, rigorous reason. Humans were thinking, producing answers to their questions through human reason. In the second period of the philosophic growth, which is the medieval period, they began to apply reason. They began to apply faith, not reason. They began to apply faith in the medieval period, in which they were connecting some of the experiences of humans also to God. There is a little gap between the medieval period and the modern period, and that little gap is described as the Renaissance. The Renaissance. So the Renaissance period is when there is, what will I call, a leap of faith. Let me just describe it like that. When there was a move, a real move from the human enterprise of philosophizing, either by the use of myth or speculation, or by the relation of human experiences to God, all the way to science. So we have the ancient period of philosophy, which is punctuated by mythologies, lots of myth, speculations. We have the medieval period of philosophy, which is concerned, which has itself more enveloped with faith, the belief that most of the things that happen to us is connected to God. And then there is a shift to science, in which humans began to seek for a systematic way of discovering, finding out answers to our questions that can be experimented, that can be observed, and then get to the answers. They began to move to science in the modern period. So that short period between the medieval period and the modern period, in which there was this shift from the belief in God, from the belief of relating philosophy to God all the way to science, is called the Renaissance. And then soon after the modern period, when humans began to use scientific methods to philosophize to a great extent, philosophy developed into the contemporary period in which we found ourselves, in which humans now begin to move extra miles, not only just discussing philosophy in the perspective of science, but also discussing philosophy in the existential time in which we live, in the contemporary time. And that's when branches of philosophy like existentialism was born, when humans began to discuss about the reality of life, began to make a clear-cut distinction between what is and what should be, the ideal and the actual. So we can see the role that mythology played in the development of philosophy. We can also see how it grew over time to develop into the stages and branches of philosophy. So philosophy began with wonder, humans wondering what is life is all about. And then as it progresses, the human mind continues to speculate, not only moves into speculating of the reason for all things being that of relating it to God, which is a myth, and then moved into having an independent thought, thinking of, in having an independent thought, they began to find other things, other sources that could be responsible for why things are the way they are in the world, other than God's. That's why we began to see philosophers like Thales talk about water. We began to see philosophers like uh, Anaximenes. Anaximenes. They have different things they talk about air, and they talking about air as a substance of all things, talking about water as a substance of all things. They are moving away. Then we have next they're talking about boundless infinity, infinity as a substance of all things. They are moving away from what used to be the normal norm of the reason for all things is because the gods are interfering. That was an independent thinking. But with time as philosophy grew, it moved away all the way down to contemporary time, our time in which we are today. So this is, in a nutshell, this is how philosophy began and developed over a time, and we got to this point. If you have any questions on this lecture on how philosophy began, and if you want to talk more deeply into it, please let me know, and I'll be glad to discuss with you. Once again, my name is Dr. Kevin. I'm a professor of philosophy, and I'll be teaching Introduction to Philosophy Field 103, 1301, 5031. I'll be teaching Introduction to Philosophy Field 1301, 5301. 5031. I'll be teaching Introduction to Philosophy 1301, 5031. Thank you so much and stay safe. Bye.